Here's what's coming up on the show.
That's the person who makes the ultimate choice of control. The person who says, I trust you, I feel safety with you. The moment that person doesn't feel that anymore, it's gone. So ultimately, the submissive person, 100% of the time, is carrying the weight of that. So when we start to rationalize it, if we want to rationalize it, absolutely the position of being the submissive or being cuckolded then translates to you being actually more powerful, because you were so powerful that you were safe enough in your power that you were free to relinquish it.
This is the Venus Cuckoldress Podcast, a place to learn all things cuckolding for the curious, for the passionate, and for the sexually empowered woman who wants it all.
Let's go.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Venus. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am crazy excited about this show today because I've talked about cuckolding for so many years. It is thrilling. It is fun. It is exciting. It's all the good things, but it also sucks sometimes. There's a lot to this, the fantasy, the desire, navigating the relationship that's fucking hard. It's hard for women and men and couples and bulls and everything. It's not easy. There's a lot of uncomfortable shit that you got to navigate through sometimes, and it's fucking hard. So I have brought in Sara Perry. She's a somatic sex coach, and she's going to talk about some, oh my God, finally, some resources, some techniques, some tips, some advice for singles and couples who maybe have a hard time, which is many of you, going through this. She's got it. She's finally, I'm able to bring you some solid, good stuff to work with here when it comes to cuckolding relationships. We're going to talk about, how to get through cuck angst, because that's not easy. That's a lot of difficulty when we're talking about not just in the moment of like, oh, it's so hot. It's like, I'm kind of jealous, but it's so hot. But like all of the emotional fuckery that happens after that cuckolding scenario, especially for the guy, like for the cucks, that's hard. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about shame. Shame is something that almost all cucks carry around, this fantasy, this desire, this love for cuckolding, and it's really detrimental for a lot of guys. So we're going to talk about, she gives some tips and suggestions about that, but also for the women, for the ladies who have to deal with slut shaming. I mean, sometimes we're our own worst enemy around that, in that, like, we give ourselves a hard time about feeling good about our sexuality. So we're going to talk about that, relationship dynamics, sharing desires and fantasies with your partner, how to check in with your partner and when, and addressing the emotional and physical needs of your partner in a cuckolding relationship and setting boundaries. Those are just some examples of what we're talking about today. So like I said, really important episode. This is filled with great tips, suggestions, advice, and resources. So get your pen and paper and make sure you take notes. I've also included all of the links that you'll need in the show notes or description notes for today's episode. So just have a look there. You can find everything there. There's also a link to Sara Perry's YouTube channel that has her meditation videos. So there's one for body love, which is fucking amazing. There's also a full body scan meditation video, which is amazing to use when you're going through cuck angst. So check out those links in the description notes. Okay, just a couple of announcements before we jump into the show today. So I recently went to Splash Mocha, and that was in Houston. This is my third year, and I had a fucking blast. As you can imagine, if you know what Splash Mocha is, it's a whole bunch of couples and single black guys. So yeah, Venus had fun. And I just released a bonus episode in it. It's called Kneeling at the BBC Altar. Woo! Yeah. I was the queen of the glory hole. So anyway, that bonus episode is a recount of all of my naughty little things that I got up to at the Splash Mocha party. So you can catch that on the private podcast. That's if you belong to any one of the 3 subscription tiers that supports the podcast on venuscuckoldress.com, you get access to all of the bonus episodes and the huge library of bonus episodes. So you can go to venuscuckoldress.com and subscribe to that if you haven't, or you could just download it on Apple Podcast subscriptions. So on Apple Podcasts, the Venus Cuckoldress podcast, you'll see all the bonus episodes are on there as well. Links in the show notes for today. Last announcement. I've been talking about recently on episodes on here about Blue Sky, the Blue Sky app, and I fucking love it. It was one of my helpful cuck members who he DM'd me and was like, "Hey, have you heard about the Blue Sky app?" And I was like, "No, I have no idea what that is." And he's like, "It's just like Twitter, but it's better." And he's right. So I have shut down my Twitter, which fucking felt amazing because I, like myself and many other women on there, have faced so much vitriol and hate and just a lot of shit really especially over the last few months, this last year. It's been really not a nice place to be. So I haven't really spent much time on there. So I've shut that down and moved over entirely to Blue Sky, the Blue Sky app. And it is so lovely there. Like everyone is so nice. And it's very much interactive, way more interactive than before. They have these starter pack things, which is pretty fucking awesome. Basically, like you can put all your favorite accounts in one list and share it with other people and like, here, follow these peeps. And they can just like with one click of a button, follow them all. Oh, it's awesome. So anyway, Blue Sky, fun place to be. It's growing by like 1 million people a day because it's really popular right now. But if you don't follow me on there, make sure you look me up. My handle is at cuckoldressv, same one as Twitter. And yeah, it's a great place. So the link is in the show notes for today if you want to go and join. All right, that's it for announcements. Let's jump into this episode. Here we go. All right, joining me on the show today, I have such a fantastic guest. I'm really excited for this. Sara Perry is joining me, and here's a little bit about her. Sara is a radically inclusive feminist from Venezuela that deeply identifies with the role of a healer, mother, and holder of space. She guides 2 powerful growing humans and a slew of otherwise uncomfortable people in her private practice in Houston, Texas. She holds an undergrad in women's gender and sexuality studies, a master's in general psychology, and a certification of sexological bodywork and somatic sex education. Her current goals are expanding her own neurological capacity for pleasure and attention and advocating for ASECT. I've heard of this, certification for graduates of the field of SSE and SBW, and eventually garnering insurance support so more people can have access to this type of healing. So Sara, welcome to the show. Say hello to all the listeners.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sara, and I want to give the land acknowledgement to the land that I personally am sitting on is unceded and also unowned land of the nomadic tribes of the Sana peoples, the Itakapa Ishak-speaking people, the Coahuiltecans, and the Karankawa.
Interracial, black and white, the beautiful and sexy relationship dynamic that we love, now in a lifestyle clothing brand you can wear with pride. Don't sacrifice quality and comfort any longer. With Maison de Neige, you get both in fresh, empowering looks for every occasion, for everyone. From the streets to the sheets and everywhere in between. Check us out at maisondeneige.com. Maison de Neige Couture. Modern fashion for the modern revolution.
I'm just amazed how you pronounced all of that. And I love that you did that. So thank you so much. Okay, you are what you call a a somatic sex coach. So I've heard of a sex coach, obviously, but I've never heard of a somatic sex coach. So I had to look it up. So, and I'm excited to talk about this. So what is that? How is it different from like a sex coach?
So I use the term coach because it has to do with finding solutions. So many people can be all kinds of coaches for different things. Specifically for me, it's sexuality and intimacy. But somatics has to do with the integration of the idea of what's your mind, your spirit, and your body. So when we talk about somatics, we talk about what if all those were one thing, and the messages that your body's giving you every time you have an itch or a gut feeling, and it's like a very specific tension. What if all of those things are actually just as much a part of your brain and so much a part of your spirit? So we integrate all of that to start paying attention to the messages of our body and not just rationalizing our way.
Right. So it sounds very holistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm excited to have you on the show because I've had, I've talked about cuckolding for so many years, and I sometimes romanticize it a lot. And it's just this beautiful, amazing kind of like, it's an amazing kind of relationship. And it's just so bonding and so loving, so trusting and all these things like that. But in real life, like it's not easy. And there are a lot of big emotions and feelings and issues that can come up with couples. And I've had them reach out over, many years. Lots of people say, can you please have someone on your show who can help with that? So I'm so happy to have you on the show today so we can go over some of these like common issues that couples have, singles or couples have when it comes to cuckolding or the cuckolding lifestyle or this kind of relationship. So I'm excited. Let's dig in. So now how, like, I know that with cuckolding, this is mostly a relationship for couples, right? There are some singles who can, I guess, hire like a dominatrix or pro-dom and have like a cuckolding session. And that's something, something on its own. But this is mostly for couples. So this is within the realm of an existing relationship. Then there are singles who are like myself out there in the dating world being like, okay, this is something that I want to have. And that has its own set of like difficulties.
Yeah.
But what I have found over the years is that, there's some very specific challenges around cuckolding that when it comes to like women or men, around things like shame or fear of being, outed, or the discretion part is like major and stuff like that. So how would you be able to, in your practice, be able to help couples when it comes to these kinds of things?
So it would be really specific to the person coming and having an issue. If the couple comes in because they both want to seek a solution, normally one of them is kind of more comfortable with the role and the other one wants some other tools and support.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the way that we start is, because we always go little by little, you're like listening to what your body's saying and learning to feel comfortable in that sensation. And it can't happen like, bam, here's the scary thing. You have to feel it because you disassociate, right? So what happens is we start having conversations and then we create these scenarios. At first, they can be theoretical. Like imagine you are at a bar and your boss walks in or a peer walks in and your wife is actually talking to another guy. Like, how do we navigate this? So then we go through, how does that feel in your body? Right? Let's talk about this emotion. Then we just break down what could happen. Like, what are the real consequences? Because most of us have all of these big anxieties about things that are really unlikely to happen.
Yes.
But our bodies show up for us because they protect us. It's like this amazing tool we have, right? So acknowledging that anxiety is a message and saying, oh, I'm so lucky that I get to have a body that communicates transparently. And now that I've gotten the message, I can process it however I choose to, is just so important and so empowering. Once you have that, you have kind of the stepping stones for moving forward in however you want to feel met.
Mm-hmm. Okay, something just really resonated with me with what you said, because you were talking about the fear being greater than it, it's kind of exaggerated. One of the fears that I'm sure for all the guys listening right now, I know you can relate when I tell you this. Like, so many of the guys who I've met have had this like enormous fear of being outed, that enormous fear of somebody finding out that they're into this. And this, I've always said, like, it's very detrimental, not just to themselves, but to their relationships or potential relationships or dating or whatever. And it is hard for me because I'm like, okay, I understand that you don't want other people to find out. I get that. Like, not everybody's gonna be flaunting that this is what they like to do in the bedroom, but to live in so much fear over that it kind of like rules your life, this like huge fear. And how when you want your partner to engage with this with you, you're kind of inviting them into that fear space as well. And that can't be healthy. So have you come across a lot of this in your practice where guys are like, well, especially because, you're within the sexuality realm, where guys and women, of course, but especially guys, when it comes to a fetish or a desire or fantasy like cuckolding, which is very taboo and very like, challenges the idea of masculinity and stuff, that they have this like irrational fear of being outed.
Yeah, this is absolutely something that I'm even processing with clients that I have right now, is how we reconcile masculinity with vulnerability. And that all has to do with this very toxic society that we all contribute to, that doesn't have a clear path for that. I actually heard from someone yesterday, a friend of mine, that in Ireland, the tradition of being like a macho fighter man actually came back full circle, because that macho man was not considered a true fighter unless he came home and wept and wrote poetry about his battles.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's really interesting that this is coming up now, because I didn't know that about that concept. But it's so funny how now that's been totally erased, right? Like, not just the idea that you could possibly enjoy your wife enjoying other people, but also the fact that you enjoy her being powerful comes across as you being less powerful. But if we're trying to rationalize it, the person that has control in power differential dynamics is always the person that chooses to give up control. That's the person who makes the ultimate choice of control. The person who says, I trust you, I feel safety with you. The moment that person doesn't feel that anymore, it's gone. So ultimately, the submissive person 100% of the time is carrying the weight of that. So when we start to rationalize it, if we want to rationalize it, absolutely the position of being the submissive or being cuckolded then translates to you being actually more powerful, because you were so powerful that you were safe enough in your power that you were free to relinquish it. Does that make sense?
Oh my God. I have been thinking that in my mind for so many years. You've just articulated it perfectly. This is always something that I felt like where, because I feel like for a lot of the guys, it's just like, oh, I can't give up who I am because, she's going to disrespect me or she won't look at me the same or whatever. And here I am saying that, like, actually, like, we see that gift of that you're giving us of like trust and safety and like, and giving up that power, and that being so monumental and just so amazing that we look at you in awe. Like, are you like, that's amazing that my partner who I love is able to do this. And but guys, just like, so many of them just they don't see that. They don't see that possibility. And I'm here, myself and many other women, like, oh my God, if you were just to give up that bit of power and like, we would adore you for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I love that you just said that. That was like a big moment for me, what you just said. So I hope that everybody who's listening actually like rewinds and replays that over again. Maybe I'll put it in the trailer, because like, that was fucking amazing. I love that so much. That's very, very powerful. So what other kind of issues do you see with like these power dynamic relationships such as cuckolding?
I think it's really important to have not only clear boundaries, but permission, not just from your spouse, but from yourself, to change your mind about what those boundaries are. Like when I think about society as a whole, we have a very hard time making it easy to change our minds. That comes from this culture of like, what is it? Winners don't quit. Yes, they do. A lot of people quit terrible relationships and close businesses. You absolutely have a skill if you know how to quit. But it's the same if you have a skill when you know how to pivot and change your mind. And it's the same with boundaries. A lot of times we don't realize we had a boundary until we cross it or it's been crossed. We have to assume that our partner didn't intend to cross our boundaries unless that's what was hot, in which case you can be like, oh, that one was a little bit crunchier than I thought it was going to be. Okay. Or just assume that they weren't trying to be hurtful and then move on and say, can we renegotiate the way that this whole thing happened? And a lot of that, specifically in like sharing partners, can look like maybe my time during these specific moments needs to be prioritized more than time with these other partners that you have, right? And it could be like, I don't know, if you're having a really sad day, or sometimes when you have a sad day, you prefer that they go away so you can be alone. All of that can be negotiated, but it's so critical to be okay changing your mind.
Okay. And I love that. It's so funny because like I've talked to a lot of newbie couples into cuckolding over the years, and like by far one of the first boundaries that they come up together with is like no kissing the bull. So she's not allowed to kiss the bull because that would be like kind of romantic. And we don't want that because that's dangerous. And like, no, This is just sex. So, but that's the first boundary that gets crossed. That one just flies out the window. Why? Because she needs to feel comfortable in that moment. She needs to feel like she's in it, and that she's in her sexuality. And I don't know about you, but for me, the last thing I'm doing when I'm in that moment of sexual pleasure is scrolling through the checklist of, oh, can I do that or can I not do that? Like it's just, that's really guaranteed to get me out of the mood real quick if I got to think about that shit. So within cuckolding, I have experienced lots of couples who have had challenges around that, where she's in the moment. She just feels like her body wants something. Her mind wants something. She wants to do something. And she does it. And then afterwards, she's like, oh, fuck. Like, I wasn't supposed to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to say that being the person that tends to facilitate people changing their relationship dynamics, we all want to sit down and have this like laundry list of crap that we're expecting. And we're like, I know this is going to be weird. And like, we want to be in the same room, or you can't be in a different room, or you can't talk to someone when I'm not in the room. We have all these rules, right? But all of those rules are really there as kind of a net for us to feel comfortable with something that feels super edgy, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're doing the work to focus on staying super present with your own emotions and your own sensation in your body, eventually that net that's all it was. It was a framework. Everything inside of that can be negotiated. In fact, if you established a dynamic like cuckolding, already you know that everything can be negotiated.
Have you heard of Afterglow? You guys, this is so amazing. You've probably heard me talk about cuck porn before and how much I'm not really a big fan. And why? Because it's not really made for women, right? But Afterglow is different. Afterglow is ethical porn made by women, for women. Well, it's for everyone, but it is especially for women. And I'll give you an example. They have hot wifing videos that one of them is that I watched. It was narrated by a woman. Okay. So hot. It's from her perspective, from her point of view. Oh my God. So sexy. Lots of interaction between her and her husband, lots of eye contact, all that sort of stuff. Like, it's hot. Guys, if you want to get your wife or girlfriend into this kind of thing, watch this together. I'm telling you. But it's not just videos. They actually have guided masturbations. They have partner exercises to improve communication and intimacy. And they have candid interviews with sex educators, influencers, and therapists. Like, there's so much more than just porn videos. It's amazing. Definitely check it out. With the code Venus, you can try it out for a week. The website is xoafterglow.com, and the code you need for your free week is Venus. That's xoafterglow.com. Check out the show notes if you can't remember, if you just want the link. Enjoy. This is very true. Yeah. Okay. So I love what you said about like it being a net, because it really is. And that's why I kind of felt like I understand why there is the need for these rules, boundaries, and limits and stuff like that. It's about keeping your comfort zone boundaries where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And perhaps those two things don't line up. And I'm sure, like you said, you see that in your practice all the time where like people are trying to negotiate stuff like that. I saw that a lot in the swingers world when I was involved in that before I knew about cuckolding. I was like, there was so much negotiating back and forth about, yes, you have same room. No, okay, if it's not the same room, but I have to get my permission first, or like there's all these little things. And I remember thinking like, God, that seems like a lot to remember, like a lot to deal with. But couples do it, and they do it because they want each other to feel safe and secure and all this, the net.
And a lot of times that's just like the stepping stone into actually just go do whatever the hell you want. See you tonight.
Right.
So, and it has to happen because we've been taught that you won't be safe unless you are jealous. We've been taught that you won't be safe if your partner can explore other people. But we don't live in that world anymore. Like I can probably still feed myself and my children if my spouse chooses not to be with me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our safety gauge is still that safety gauge, but we live in this world where actually we're going to be fine.
Yeah, we're going to be okay. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about jealousy because yes, okay, over the years, many, many, many cucks have reached out to me not knowing how to deal with this cucky angst, I call it, which is that like mix of emotions. This is terribly sexy and hot. She's going out with this other guy. She's never been out with another guy. Like this is, I'm scared. I'm nervous. I feel like I'm going to throw up, but also I'm insanely turned on. This is like this crazy thing of emotional stuff that happens with cucks when their partner is going to be having some sort of sexual encounter with somebody else. How they deal with that. Because it's one thing to watch cuck porn and be like, oh, that's fucking hot and sexy and everything like that. And whole other thing in real life to do this, it can go horribly wrong. And I love the fact that you're, in this holistic mode of healing and coaching with people, because this cuck angst involves understanding what your body's going through. One minute they want to throw up, the next minute they've had the best orgasm of their life. Poor cucks, like this is a lot to go through. Yeah. How can guys anticipate what that might be like for them, or navigate it when they're going through it in a healthy way where it's not going to be detrimental to their relationship?
Okay, so totally, yes, I want to acknowledge that this definitely happens, and it happens to people who have been doing it forever as well. I think that it's important to talk about like the physiology of it. Biologically, the same part of our brain that's responsible for sexual arousal is responsible for other forms of arousal. So like being scared and running away, or freezing, right? Or fawning, like you're going into fake mode so that someone will be happy with you. So it makes sense that a lot of these emotions happen at the same time as very intense arousal. I would suggest to people to create a boundary within yourself about maybe if your partner is going on a date, this is a conversation that needs to be had long after, not when the partner arrives from the date. Like you don't get to throw a fit tantrum so that then you get more attention. Acknowledge like, oh, it would be really nice and accommodating and get more attention. And I'll just say, I would love a lot of attention when you get home. And you can say that at the end of the date. You don't have to interrupt the date, right? It's like make little boundaries within yourself that seem attainable.
Okay.
And then when you're talking about those boundaries later, really acknowledge what was going on with your body. If you're in that moment where you're like processing all this crazy sensation, there's all kinds of YouTube videos for somatic body scans. And that's literally just a guided way to pay attention to everywhere from the tip of your nose to the tips of your toes, to say, okay, this part was tense. What happens if I release it? Like usually if you have like a lot of tension in your stomach, you can change your posture and that dissipates. We have so much control over what we're interpreting as a feeling if we just change our body posture. So using some kind of guide that can keep you engaged while still paying attention to what's happening to your body, and find ways to like change that posture, and therefore that emotion and sensation can be like unleashing to this new power that you have over taking some control about how you're showing up with anxiety or with, angst.
Oh my gosh. I think that was one of the best suggestions, because I, up until now, haven't had much to suggest to these guys that are going through that. And I know they reach out to other couples and are like, okay, like, what do I do? Like, I'm going through this. They're literally like having this anxiety, like meltdown, like, oh my God, and help. And like, what do I do? But the YouTube videos regarding like paying attention to how your body is feeling and making corrections. Yes. This is definitely something that guys can do. So what is something that women can do to help support their partner during that process? I did have a couple on the show, and this was brilliant. She wrote him a beautiful letter before she left and sealed the envelope and was like, this is for you if you need it. If you go through, if you're losing it, if you're shutting down, if you're having that moment where you're just like, open this and read it. And he did. I don't know what it said. He didn't share, but like, I just thought that was so nice to be able to like think about that ahead of time and provide that kind of comfort for your partner. I thought that was amazing. Do you have any suggestions for what women could do to help support their guy when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really sweet idea. It inspires me to think of like things that your partner enjoys doing. Like in psychology, we talk about sublimation. Sometimes like a good way to handle big emotions that are negative is to distract yourself with other positive things, like going to work out or cleaning the closet, for some people. And most of us engage in those behaviors naturally. I personally think that that's a form of disassociation, and that it's okay to feel big emotions. Like we would benefit from just sitting in our big emotions, and then think long term it makes us better people. But if we're not able to, safe enough, comfortable enough to yet, then go sublimate. Go do all the stuff you want to do. Maybe plan something for your spouse to be distracted, like have like him go out with the guys for drinks while you're out. And even if it's on his mind, there'll be something going on. Or maybe he could go to a movie, something that he enjoys to do, and you can plan it for him. And then you have a little bit of that like acts of service thing because you planned it. So they know you were thinking about them. And you also have something that's actively distracting them.
A list of things to do, the cucky list. Keep him busy. I love it.
The cucky do list.
Yeah, the cucky to-do list. I love it. Okay. And then for women, this is another big issue that I've come across, is that like a lot of women feel shame around their own sexuality. I luckily have never felt that, I don't think. I've just always been slutty and been like, oh, whatever, it's all good. But I haven't struggled with it like most women have or do. And I get that. I could totally understand why they feel so much pressure to not, enjoy and celebrate their sexuality. But in a cuckolding relationship, it kind of requires them to do so. So you'll have like this couple, they've been married for a very long time and monogamous the whole time. And then he shares his desires and fantasies around cuckolding with her. And she's like, oh, I don't think I could do that. Like, I would feel so dirty. I would feel so slutty. I don't think I could do that. And this is a real stumbling block for them. I am sure you come across this in your practice where, women have to deal with sexual shame and guilt. How do you best support them or help them with this?
I think all we can do is try to like relight the match. Because there was a time that they were attracted to other men, and likely through society and through years that got suppressed, you know? So you can just start little by little. You could start being like, well, maybe don't go on a date and hook up with that guy, but when we're at a bar, start telling me why you think someone's attractive, you know, and just start little by little. You don't have to like jump into the deep end. And I promise there will be a day, if you go out enough by yourself, at some point there will be a moment that you meet people that you think are attractive and want to share your body with. Absolutely. And so it doesn't have to be immediately. If you find a little path to start like trickling in the attraction for other people, I think it reignites.
Oh, it's a great tip. I think because like, oh, these poor guys, when they bring it up to the wife, they usually do it so wrong. They're like, I just want you to go fuck a bunch of other dudes and I'm going to watch. And like, it's going to be so hot. Right? And she's just like, what? First of all, what? So start small. And there is so much fun that couples can have without her actually sleeping with other guys. Like, it's a little bit scary to sleep with a random stranger dude.
Yeah. Not to mention it's like literally putting our lives in danger.
Absolutely. In different ways too. I mean, there's, you know, you could be assaulted. Yeah. You could have your physical health like fucked up because of it. Like you can, I mean, now not to mention all the abortion bans and everything. Like you're fucked if something happens. So as a woman, but yes, starting slow and doing fun things, even just talking about her role play and everything like that. I'm like, guys, come on. How come you don't think about this? Like you just go straight to the porn ending. In their mind, they're just
and then they're dealing with all of the backlash of that, right? Then they're dealing with all the angst and all the, when really, if you would have titrated the whole thing from the start, it probably would have worked out a lot better for both.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, guys listening, I hope you listen to what she just said. Absolutely. Because, you're going to jump in with both, you know, with both feet and just be like, all right, let's do this. And then she's going to go sleep with this other guy. And like, oh, holy man, there's so many things that can go wrong with that. But I also working your way up to it.
We didn't really start discussing this, but a lot of times the people that women are attracted to, at least in my experience as being a woman, are people that you've already had some contact with. For example, friends, coworkers, right? And most of those people are on the do not fuck list, right? So there's always going to be this little contingency of, oh, you want me to go sleep with a bunch of people? Well, Joe Blow over here has been hanging out at our house for 3 years and I think he's kind of cute. And then your spouse is going to say, well, absolutely not. Right? Yep. At least at first. I'm not saying never. But isn't it interesting that we have to find a way to kind of curb that leaping point? You can't be so eager that it gives someone permission to cross boundaries that could be like really damaging boundaries for you and for your family and maybe for your work life. Right.
I found that a lot actually, where a new couple is, so he's like, I want you to fuck some guy and I want to watch whatever. And then eventually she gets to the point where like, okay, but he wants it to be a random stranger for safe, like, because he doesn't want her to catch feelings, right? He wants it to be just sex. Like this guy's just going to be a dick and that's it. Like, and so that's his like comfort level. Okay. But her comfort level is something entirely different. Like you said, like she wants to know this person. She wants to feel safe with them. She wants to, most women say they want to have some sort of connection with that person, that they don't want it to just be, I'm just going to fuck this random dude and then leave. Like they want like to know, they want to talk to them, get to know them. It's about emotional and physical safety. And so you have this disconnect where couples can't agree on something like that. Or she's like, oh, maybe I'll, sleep with my ex or something like that, which I'm like, holy shit, you want really complicate things. The potential for disaster, I don't know, seems pretty high. It's crazy. Okay. So how, like, I know that it's with all of these sensations and emotions and stuff, like we talked about different strategies around managing cuck angst and the guilt and the shame and stuff like that. But all of the cuckold couples who I know who are thriving in this lifestyle, they do this one thing often, is check in with each other and communicate about how they're feeling. But this is not something I think that a lot of couples, regular everyday couples, like actually practice. But this seems to be the key to success when it comes to this kind of relationship. How would you recommend couples go about doing that? Actually, do they schedule time? How do people get in the routine of doing that?
I think you just have to it has to be on purpose. If you have to schedule it. But I don't know how your schedule is. Mine is like, if you put something on my calendar, odds are I'll be busy that day in a week. Like it just changes, right?
Yeah.
So there's something I love called the 5-minute game, and we play it. It's kind of a power differential game where you would set a timer for 5 minutes, and then one person gets to choose if they want something done to them or if they want to do something to the other person for the 5 minutes. It could be sexual or non-sexual, but most of the time we're craving connection. So any kind of touch is nice. Sometimes it could be like, I want you to just brush my hair. And it turns out that 5 minutes is a really long time. That's why we set a timer. And having these purposeful connections with people, with your partner, brings you back to feeling loved and taken care of. When you can ask for what you want, if what you want is to put your hands on them, like, I don't know, maybe your partner has like a fun part of their body that you like to squish or play with that they typically wouldn't allow you to just because it's like doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's a good time to ask for that. And those 5 minutes are also a great time to have a conversation about how you're doing. Like, oh, I really missed you when I did this the other day and I thought of you. And your hands are busy, so you're not on your phone. And typically, children are pretty good about leaving you alone if you're very connected to someone else for the moment. And if they're there, then they can be a part of it. Like, I'm jump on, but I'm doing this thing. Like, I'm brushing mom's hair right now, you know? And make it just a part of your check-in. And I like to make it a rule that good relationships have a 5-minute game at least once a week. And we think it's hard to find time to get together, but if you can't take 5 minutes, and that can be unscheduled, right? So it's not like, it could just be you got out of the shower and you're like, do you have 5 minutes for the 5-minute game? And most of the time, even if you're running late, you have 5 minutes.
I love that. I think that's so important. I would definitely have to schedule stuff like that because, like, I just feel like I forget. I would forget. You know, you get so caught up in everyday thing, the everyday life of busy shit, you know, especially, you know, parenthood. Like, you forget everything else. Just so involved in that. Okay, so one of the things that a lot of the guys in this lifestyle have written to me about, talked to me about, asked me about, booked private chats to me about is the same issue in that they brought this up to their wife. You know, she, may have participated in talking about it or whatever. Maybe they did some role play or maybe they, used some toys in the bedroom or something like that. But over a period of time, she kind of loses interest in it. And he feels like he's like pushing this more and more. And they're like, how do I get my wife back into being interested in this? And this is like so common across the board. What do you think's going on with that? Did women just really like, are they just disinterested? Is it just a matter of them kind of getting them back into it? Or is this something else?
I think that we're cyclical. Like we tend to be really into stuff and then we get over that thing and then we're really into something else. And that doesn't mean we're not into that thing. I think we tend to be more into things that are easier to accomplish than going to sleep with someone else. Theoretically, that's very easy to accomplish, but it's not quite that simple, right? So I think we get like kind of navigate towards things that are easier to accomplish. Like maybe we're really into butt plugs for a while because you own them and they're there. So you don't have to like hunt them down every time and feel safe with them. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think we're all cyclical. And I think you can absolutely bring someone back around to something if you just let it rest for a minute. Because otherwise it gets annoying. It gets like, well, what do you talk? Like I like other things, right? Yeah. So I think it's important to allow someone to have their little ebb and flow.
Oh, I love that. So for the cuckies listening, make sure that you understand that maybe she just needs a little bit of a break sometimes, and that's okay. I feel like from the cucks who I've met and talked to over the years, this is very much something that they think about all the time. every day, that they're constantly thinking about these fantasies, that this is something that is really big and important to them. Okay, then the next question I have for you is another very common situation that I see in this lifestyle, in that he brings it up to her. She wants nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. And I feel bad for these couples because, I mean, just maybe she just like is not into it. Like, is that, and I tell these guys, I'm like, if she had this fetish where you were just like, oh, there's no fucking way. Like, there's no way. What would you do? Like, I mean, it's not an easy situation to be in when somebody wants nothing to do with this other person's deep desires, deep fantasies, like something that is such a big, seems to be a big part of what they want in their life. And what do you do? Are these couples just not compatible? Like, what should they do?
I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I think sometimes you're just not into it, and it's okay. First of all, we tend not to know what we're even into when we first meet our partners.
Yeah.
Right. But even if we are, that still changes over time. It's okay for your partners to have different, like what I call like triggers, like the thing that really makes you come, than you. It's totally okay. Hopefully they're still willing to engage in some form of fantasy play. And I think that planting the seed for kind of fantasy play eventually loosens people up to the idea, because we create patterns. So like if it's always hot and we're always telling the sexy story, then maybe it might happen. I'm not saying force it, right? But I'm saying the odds of it happening are much more than if you would have never said anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I still think sometimes they're just not going to be into it. Hopefully your partners are still willing to like sauce things up to turn you on when you're having sex. And maybe that leads to something more.
And for the ladies listening, like, it's so easy just to say that little thing when you're having sex with your husband. Just whisper in his ear, like, oh, totally fucked that guy I saw on the bus today. Like, that's all you need to say. And boom, he's happy as fuck for a week after that. He's riding on this high of like, oh my God, I can't believe what she said. That was so hot. This is literally all we need to say. And I feel like if you really love your partner, then you will find ways to indulge their fantasies like that, because it is important to them. And that's what you do when you love somebody. It doesn't mean you have to go out and fuck a bunch of dudes, but you can learn to say these awesome little things, hot little things that are going to set them off completely. Absolutely. Into like, I can't control myself when we're having sex. That is hot.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that it's also a form of like being seen, for your partner to think that it's worthy of you to have those things you think are sexy, even in play, right? It's like, it will make someone feel much better that you were honest about what you wanted, if they can like reciprocate, if they can say, that is hot, babe. I see it. I get what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And that's like the nice thing to do, I think, for your partner, you know, like you said, to feel seen and to make them feel loved. That's how you make somebody feel loved and safe in your relationship. So, okay. Now, my last question. We've talked about couples a lot, but what about the singles? What about the singles? Like, a part of the tricky part around dating in this lifestyle, knowing that you want somebody who also is open-minded to your fantasies around cuckolding, your desires around cuckolding, and seeking that out. There is this like challenge. Do you bring it up right in the beginning with somebody? Or do you wait until later on, let's say 6 months to a year into the relationship, where you bring it up? What do you recommend?
I think it depends. I'm actually in the process of dealing with this with a few of my clients right now who are single and looking for partners. And I think it depends on what ultimately they're looking for. If what they're looking for is to have a long-term committed relationship, and this is instrumental in that design, then yeah, I think you can be honest at the beginning and say, look, I'm really into this. I like establish some kind of what boundary you would like. Like for some people, I have a client who has no interest in exploring other people himself. And I think that could be very important to a lot of women.
Mhm.
So being able to communicate that, that's not the interest I have. This is just something I've really been into. And I know that it's what I want from my future and from my wife and the mother of my children. And it's okay for that not to be what someone wants. Like, it's really fine. And it's probably better to be in that situation than to be in what we were referring to earlier, where they've been married maybe for years and years and years. And they're like, hell no. And by the way, sometimes they're not even like accepting of that. Sometimes they're like disgusted, right? So you don't want to be stuck in the situation where you're having to fight your own shame because in your house, there's shame about what you like.
Yeah.
Right. I also think that if you are just casually dating, you just want a girlfriend, and to do that, you don't have to say it right away. I think you can casually date, and that it's more likely to happen that way because most of the time people make the lines of sexuality and monogamy really blurry when it's not a cemented relationship. So that's probably a more likely space for that to happen than already inside of a super committed dynamic or with someone who's like wanting a commitment because it just feels unsafe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very good advice on that. I agree. I definitely have been one to be like, it depends where you are in life. You're casually dating in your 20s and you're just like, ah, fuck it. Who cares? Like, I'm just out here having fun. Then who cares? But if you are looking for your life partner, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world to me to bring it up in the beginning and figure out, like, do we line up with this or not? But I think how you bring it up to a person is also very important. How you word it. Yeah. I've said over and over again on the show, like, do not say you want cuckolding. Do not bring up kink language. Like, don't say anything about that. Just talk about it being a one-sided open relationship that you're looking for, where she gets extra fun and you both love it that way. Just keep it simple. Ask me more about it, that kind of thing. But
I think it would be really a good idea for us to get together and create a kind of script for good language to use. Like, we use that all the time in my practice. And it would be really helpful for us to have like cue words that we're like, throw these in there. These might work better,
Absolutely. I think guys are starved for that kind of information because they truly don't know how to put it out there in a way that doesn't turn off a lot of women unnecessarily. But then there's the other problem of, like, most guys, let's face it, are way too scared to put anything about this on their dating profile or bring it up to women. So there's that. We talked about this. Cuck shame. So, yeah.
I do want to say that something we didn't mention at all that I think is important is that for all of the people listening who are very scared to be outed, think about what it would be like to find out that one of your best friends is also into that. Think about what it would be like to find out that your dad was into that or your boss, and how freeing that would have been. And I think that it's a ton more common than we realize it is, that guys think that that's sexy. And there's a lot of freedom that can happen if we are safe enough to tell just one friend. Not to mention the fact that we feel much better when we're not hiding something about ourselves.
Yes. I would really like for guys to be able to understand what you just said. It's still very incredibly scary for a lot of men to even think about that, though. So I think there's some work that needs to be done. But I do have friends who are open about it. I mean, they don't go out like, purposely telling everybody, but they're open about it to people in their life. And nothing catastrophic has happened to them. It's amazing. The world didn't end. They didn't lose their job. They didn't lose friends. They didn't lose family. Like, it was very freeing. And every one of them says that is very freeing. I actually interviewed somebody on the show who was, and this is a shitty story, but sextorted. Yeah. And this person who pretended to be a woman got his pictures and threatened to send them to, they had all of his boss's information, his parents, his ex-wife, like everybody. And instead of paying the money, he just went and told all of these people, and it forced him out of the closet. And he said, like, everybody was just like, all right, whatever, it's fine. They don't care. Even his boss was like, it's fine, whatever, you have nothing to worry about. Right. And even his parents, they were like, oh, what'd you do that for? But they didn't care, And he said, like, this was a very freeing experience for him, and that, like, he doesn't have to worry about any of that anymore. Nobody judged him. Like, it was stressful as hell, but like life didn't end.
There's also this weird phenomenon of like the compulsory need to talk about fetishes where no one feels the need to talk about fucking in missionary style. You know, it's like for some reason you don't have to disclose, I like to have doggy style sex, but you have to disclose, I like to get pegged. So it's like, it's not an even, like no one actually cares about your sexuality unless you're transgressive or gay. Otherwise, you never have to come out of the closet as straight. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I hate the rhetoric. Like you never actually have to come out of the closet. You don't actually ever have to do anything for anyone. And also people are a lot less concerned with what you're doing with your partner that you are committed and loving, especially if your life is otherwise stable. It's like that's something I've noticed. Like if your life is a wreck, then everyone's judging all your kinky shit. But if your life is like put together, everyone's like, oh, that's very interesting of you.
Yes, absolutely. If you're happy living your best fucking life together, I mean, really, nobody cares what you're doing in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Oh, I love that. Okay. Before I wrap this up, do you have, like, I'm going to post a link to one of those YouTube videos that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other resources that you would think would be helpful for the listeners?
Well, I love my field of work. There's not a ton of us, but there are, if you look up somatic sex educators, I think that would be an amazing place to start. And most of us are doing virtual work with couples or groups too. Some of us, I have some friends in Canada that are doing like group sessions and group sessions for couples. And so joining something like that could be an amazing way to feel much more connected to your partner and to your own integrity and like doing what you want to be doing and in the boundaries that you want to be doing it. And so, I really would recommend that someone find someone that studied the kind of stuff I studied because it's life-changing stuff.
Oh my God. Absolutely. I can see it being so helpful for people who are in this lifestyle, hugely helpful. So I will definitely post all the links that I can in the show notes for today. Where can people learn more about you and your practice and everything like that? Where do you want people to find more information?
I have a website, Haven Space, HAVEN space coaching.com. And then that has a YouTube channel. It's the same, Haven Space Coaching, and an Instagram, Haven Space Coaching. So any of those avenues. And I'm on LinkedIn, Sara Perry, SSE, Somatic Sex Educator.
And you have a podcast too. I forgot I listened to your podcast. Like you're out there just ruling the world. I fucking love it.
The podcast was a COVID project and it's been put on pause for now, but the episodes are still out there for people to listen to. I think there's like 65. They're all about different fetishes. Once in a while, there's a couple of little things that are different, but in general, I would just randomly pick a fetish, do some research and record a podcast about it. So there's some fun stuff on there too.
Yes, I listened to the cuckolding one. Very well done. Excellent. I'll post a link to that in the show notes for today as well. Sara, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show with me. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you go to venuscuckoldress.com. That's where you can book a private chat with me. And you can also join the Queen's Quarters community and get all the amazing benefits like the private podcast and the Helpful Cuck tier where you can get key holding, the private Snapchat group, monthly private chats with me, and weekly live hangouts and invites to special live events. Oh, and you can also submit a question or a confession for the show. Just go to venuscuckoldress.com and click on the link that says the podcast. Make sure you follow me on Blue Sky Social. Yes, I said Blue Sky Social. Fuck Twitter. My handle there is @cuckoldressv. All right, that's it for today's show, you guys. We'll see you next time. Can you believe it's been 4 years since I first started this podcast? And looking back, I had no idea that this would be my full-time job. I love the work that I do, and it's because of you, the listeners, and your support that I'm able to do this. So right now, if you join the Helpful Cuck tier, you get tons of benefits. My favorite ones are the private one-to-one chat every month. You also get access to my private Snapchat group, weekly live hangouts with me on Crowdcast. I love those. And you get juicy bonus episodes. There's key holding. There's video replays of the Pillow Talk events. And there's also access to my private community on the Moan app. So join right now. You can use the promo code CUCKLOVE2024 for 15% off your Helpful Cuck membership at venuscuckoldress.com.